Welcome to Wisdom Woman podcast. I believe that is in constant change and growth, not in perfection, that we find happiness. In this podcast, I'm going to be talking with top performance professionals about tools, techniques, new ideas on how to develop your communication skills, use your creative thinking, be a team player, manage your tasks like a pro, be motivated, become an expert on relationships, and a problem solver. Everything you need to be 5 stars in all areas of your life. My intention is to help you develop your skills and find balance between your professional and personal life. My name is Betina Pflug, and I hope I can be your trusted advisor. Welcome, esteemed listeners, to another captivating episode of Wisdom Woman, where we uncover profound insights and stories from remarkable individuals across the globe. I'm your host, Betina Pflug, and today we embark on a thought-provoking exploration into the intrinsic dance between marriage and career for expat executives. In this enlightening episode, we have the privilege of delving into this fascinating topic with our distinguished guest, Katja Rembrandt. Katja's wealth of experience and expertise as an executive expat headhunter offers a unique perspective on the challenges and triumphs faced by global professionals. But before we immerse ourselves in the enriching conversation, let's take a moment to set the stage. In a world where borders blur and opportunities become from distant horizons, the fusion of marriage and career for executive expats is a terrain ripe of exploration. Katja Rembrandt is not only an executive coach, but she was an expat headhunter and also a seasoned professional with a diverse background, spanning multiple industries and roles. With a foundation in pure mathematics and computer science from the London School of Economics, Katja's career trajectory has traversed 20 plus years of information technology consulting, executive search consulting, career coaching, and the founding of a nonprofit organization focused on diversity in the Asia Pacific region. I met her here in Australia, and we have so much in common. Furthermore, Katja's role as a homestay provider for over 10 years further enriched her understanding and appreciation of diversity, having hosted over 300 youngest from various countries aged between 13 and mid-20s. First-hand experience of living with individuals from different cultural backgrounds has deepened her cultural competence and empathy, and enhancing her ability to connect with people from all walks of life. Join us as we unravel the complexity of this journey with Katja Rembrandt, shedding light on the dynamic global living and the pursuit of professional success aims this intrinsicity of family life. So prepare to be inspired as we glean insight from Katja's wealth of experience and wisdom. The episodes prompts to ignite reflection, spark curiosity, and offer invaluable guidance for those navigating the intersections of marriage and career in the expat realm. Are you ready to embark on this enlightening odyssey with us? I know I am, and with further ado, let's welcome our esteemed guest, Katja Rembrandt, to Wisdom Woman. Welcome, Katja. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Thank you. What an amazing name for a podcast, Wisdom Woman. And I must say, if I still was in the blushing age, which I'm no longer, all this kind of distinguished and wise and enlightening, and I go, it's blush-worthy material. So thank you. Thank you for all the compliments.
You're welcome, Katja. And tell me more, from your experience as a headhunter for executive expats, how do you perceive the impact of marriage on career growth in the international settings?
I would say that impact, that correlation between marriage and an expatriate career is only really a concern for people who have got expatriate potential. Yeah, if you're like a specialist that's really good in your local scene, then a lot of what I'm going to say doesn't really matter, because when you don't move as an expat, whether alone or in a family, well, that's not in your career path, then what we're talking about today doesn't make sense. But if you have aspirations for the top end, so the C end or towards the C end of corporate life, so by that I mean the chief executive officer or the chief operating officer, chief financial officer, all of that C, or just underneath it. So say managing director level of a country in a particular function. If that is your trajectory, you've got the capacity for it, then there will certainly come a time in anybody's life, both male and female, heterosexual and non-heterosexual, where your marital status can make a massive difference. And to give you an example, and I'm going to have an example more of, say, a heterosexual oriented person, male, as still most of the expats are male, regrettably, sorry, but it still is the case. Changing though. You would be more headhuntable, you would be easier to move if you are single, when you are single. And that means that for a lot of men who are on the upwards trajectory in their career, they will more easily move in their 30s, predominantly their 30s and then early 40s, to get that role, to accept a role overseas, to be offered that role overseas. Because A, you're easier to move, you're also less costly to move. There's no family involved in that move, and you're less, what was called in HR term or recruitment terms, you're less sticky. You're not going to stick as long in your location. You can be unstuck and put somewhere else. And if that is not ideal, or if you've actually reached your potential in that location, which can be usually 2 or 3 years, then you can get unstuck and restuck very easily again. So being single makes a lot of sense in your 30s and very early 40s as you're progressing up the ladder. There comes a point, though, for most male executives where the role becomes so senior that the recruiting organization wants you to stay longer than those 2 or 3 years. They want you to be more sticky. And that's where actually being in a relationship, a committed relationship, so marriage or the equivalent, possibly even having children, becomes an attractive feature for a recruiting organization. And as the headhunter is the agent for the recruiting organization, they follow those indications.
Can you share some observations on the challenges faced by executive expats who are married and seeking for a career advancement abroad?
Yes, the same still applies. You have to become so attractive that you being married and possibly having a family does not stop a company from saying, we prefer you over any other candidate. So if we're going to call round numbers and we just say approximately, doesn't matter, an up and coming career professional, whether it is in euros or in Australian dollars or American dollars, you would generally be getting a $300,000 package, or euro package. That's kind of up and coming at the moment in the current market. So from a recruitment point of view, if you're moving this particular $300,000 rewarded individual, then there is the cost of moving them. There's the cost of paying for the headhunter if a headhunter was involved. There's the cost of relocating all of the dependent family members. That package can quite easily double. Quite easily, if you think that most of the headhunting fields are about a third of that package already. So we're looking at the equivalent cost, annual salary cost of 2 years for that executive to get this one executive on board. So you have to make it worthwhile to the recruiting organization. And that means that you need to be known in your field as being good at what you do, very good at what you do, and that you are going to potentially keep on being very good at what you do in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that those executives face is also adjusting for all the needs of each member of the family. Don't you think? for example, if they have kids that are in school and need to finish school, maybe the executive cannot move away. That's one of the challenges that the executive face.
Exactly.
If they have animals and they want to take animals with them, what a challenge to bring the animals.
You are indeed spot on, you wise woman, you. That is exactly what I mean of increasing the stickability. Yeah. If you have a partner who is thriving in the location that they're in, whether that's they're thriving in their career, they're thriving in their friendship circle, they're thriving in their not-for-profit work, they're thriving as a parent, they've got children in different schools that they're also thriving in, or maybe the opposite. They might have children who need a particular environment to thrive. They need more family support, or they need a particular schooling system, or we're all different. So if those things increase the liking, the fit with the location they're in, then you've got increased stickability. They're sticky. So that means that if you're approaching the expat to go and work elsewhere, then the whole family needs to be able to also move and within a reasonable amount of time begin to thrive again. Because the person who's most likely to thrive is the person who's being moved for the job. They have a circle, they're being welcomed, they're being onboarded, they're getting lots and lots of new challenges and opportunities in their role. The spouse and the children, and possibly even the following parents and the dogs or the cats or all the other pets, might not necessarily have such an easy integration. And that becomes the challenge with most expat families.
In your opinion, how does the support of the spouse influence the career trajectory of the executive expat?
Massively. This is often a make or break. Because in successful expat families, so families where there is an ongoing continuation of expat placements, so many roles in different different roles going up the career ladder in different locations, then the only way that family survives as a family if the bonds between the members in the family strengthen. So the bonds internally become tighter than the average family that doesn't move so much. And their flexibility of taking the whole unit somewhere else therefore strengthens because they've got much better support internally towards each other. That also means that bond being quite strong between the family, so the spouses and possibly the children and the supporting parents, if for whatever reason, one of that family unit, so say the spouse goes, no, this is not the right time for me, I don't agree, then that could be a make or break for that particular move because the family bond needs to be so strong. So there'll be a lot of input and a lot of respect for whether it works for the spouse, it works for the whole family. And vice versa.
In some cases, we were discussing the importance of bringing the parents together with them when they take care of the parents. Have you seen any case like that where the whole family brings the parents?
Absolutely, especially if the parents, it's a family structure where the parents have a very strong role towards the grandchildren or possibly towards the following spouse. Yeah, so you don't just get what I would call the European nuclear family of spouses and children, possibly some pets. You certainly get 3-generation families or older generation, the parents, and then a dependent child who is in a relationship but needs some kind of support. It could also mean that there is a business relationship. It doesn't just have to be a supportive family relationship. It could be a family business. So you have to keep all of those things in mind, especially if you're considering that still to this day, most of the expats are male. And there are different real rules for females, by the way, when it comes to relationships and expat life. And most of small business growth is female owned. And that can often be a family business. So then even if the parents don't move, there needs to be a very frequent way of still being very strongly in contact with those parents.
Yeah, when I was living in the United States, I had a lot of friends that were expats over there, and I had a female that she was the one transfer, and her husband had to quit his financial director. He was a financial director of Accor hotels, and he had to quit his job and come home and take care of their kid. It was really challenging for him. I was coaching him to find a purpose because it was super challenging. He said yes at the beginning, but when he faced the challenge of taking care of a house and adapting the kids to school and cooking and doing everything, after 6 months he was burning out.
Absolutely. So I did a little bit of work in that field as well, especially when we did the diversity work with the not-for-profit Diversity Foundation, in that there is this kind of vanilla assumption that the expat is the male, and that is still predominantly the case. But increasingly, as women go up the corporate ladder, it can be the female part of the relationship that gets the expat role, and then the male has to support. And the support for that male partner is much less. Corporations and support facilities are not all that well geared to support a male partner with becoming the family organizer. And that's also often where the grandparents come in, where they start visiting more frequently, or they move with them to, supply that support for the grandchildren. So it's quite interesting, a challenge. And there's definitely a gap there. There's insufficient support when the male is the following partner, especially when there's small children involved.
Yeah, in this case, they were very successful. He really enjoyed his role as a father at home. But after 6 months, he was able to find a hybrid work where he needed to go to the office only 2 days, and the other 3 days he was at home. And they make a smooth transition. Now they have 2 babies, so it's working pretty well. But I think one of the topics we talked a lot when we were in person discussing this topic, Katja, was the importance of communication. And what can you share with us about the importance of having a good communication among the couple to make it happen when you move abroad?
It's interesting because when I did executive work, I didn't necessarily coach people in improving their relationship skills. My focus was to find the right talent, and then when the talent had been placed, to make sure that the whole family, not just the expat, but the whole family, integrated really well. Because it is important that the whole family support it. However, now with the decade or two more skills that I've gained, I would say that to stand a fair or a better chance within a couple or within a family to survive expat life is that you have to be even more versed, like even better, if that's not an inappropriate word, at doing relationship. Yeah. So I'll give you a personal example. I became an expat prior to my first marriage, and did really well as a single, up and coming career person that worked brilliantly for me in my sort of mid to late 20s. But then when I married, it became much more my then husband's career because he was further up the ladder. And I would say from personal experience, even though we loved one another and we married, but through love, our relationship was not strong enough. Our ability to communicate and listen and feedback and truly accept and feedback the consequences of all these moves was insufficient, and our marriage collapsed. And we were definitely not an exception to the rule. You need very good communication skill. You need very good resiliency, both independently and together, to be able to survive expat life. But as I say, if you build up those skills, those relating skills basically, and you build up the resiliency individually and as a couple and as a family eventually, you end up with a much, much stronger relationship, and a much, much stronger relationship within the family. So there's downsides and upsides. It's risky. You need to actually build the skills, but if you build them, you end up with an amazing potential of relationship.
And the communication, it stands also for the communication with the kids, because first you have to
Mm-hmm.
convince them how good it will be, the new life. And then once they arrive, have an open communication to understand when they have challenges and to motivate them. Can you share some inputs on your experience on how the communication impacted the relationship with the kids?
I'm not going to use my own example there because my child was too small. She still kind of traveled as a baby, and then I migrated to Australia and didn't do expat life again. However, from my experience with the candidates that I work with and the executives who were the recruiting executives, and now with the experience of all the counseling and coaching I've done, it's this balancing act. Like, you don't move, you don't put yourself through the stress of major change unless there's something that pulls you towards that. There's something that motivates you, something that is a combination of adventure, hope, improvement, anything that basically helps you overcome the hurdle of change, because most humans don't like change. It could, however, be that you happen to be personality types that love challenges, but your children might not. So that's where that really good communication comes into play, where you don't overpower any part of the family with your wish to go, and don't listen and be realistic about the challenges that other parts of the family might find. Because if you don't listen to those feedback, like, there might be a child who goes, I really don't want to go there. I've seen documentaries. I don't like the language. I don't like learning new languages. They're not nice to dogs in that country. Like, whatever, the reason might be that they picked up. If you don't give that space to be talked about, to be discussed, to find possible solutions, then when the challenges are perceived to be too big for that person, then you basically got a breakaway factor, and the whole family bond becomes unstable. You've got one person who's miserable and is not integrating, they're not thriving. And very often what is the case is that the caring parent, so maybe in the case of your friend who was the male who stayed at home, then goes, hey, we've got a child who's suffering. Therefore, I'm not happy. I cannot be a good parent with good conscience because one of our children is suffering. So you get these fractions if you don't prepare yourself really well before you go, and if you don't continually allow really honest feedback and communication and support. And one of the tricks for that, as in anything in life, is to be open to the challenges, open to the things that can go wrong, and then try and balance it out with whatever is positive in the family. So you're probably aware of, all the different ways that we communicate love. Well, that applies everywhere. So that they feel supported, that they notice that you're close to them, that you're helping them with particular gifts that help them, integrate. So use the different communication styles, the different communication languages, the different love languages, and do some training.
Yeah,
And
training
these
and
days,
getting to know the personality of your
yeah,
kids is a huge thing. For example, one of my daughters, she really, really like being around her friends. She needs these friendships to feel confident in her journey. And when we had to move here to Australia, we noticed that leaving her friends was something huge as compared to the other one who likes more adventures was easier.
mm,
And then because we have done the personality test, we understood her personality, we were able to come up with an idea on how she could meet her friends again. So her
yeah,
best friend, for example, is from South Korea, and we organized a trip for them to meet in South Korea in 1 year. So she was super excited about coming here
yeah,
to Australia, knowing that in 1 year ahead she was going to be able to see
yeah,
her friend again. So that's when the
correct.
communication
Yeah,
comes, getting to know what's important to your kids,
yeah,
adjusting, and
yeah.
looking
And
for help. That's super
yeah,
important. important.
Exactly. So that's a really good concrete example. It could be, for instance, with the children with my child, she doesn't like change. She still doesn't like change. It's just, the way that she does life. And I love change. So I don't find that a particular challenge. I find that attractive. However, I noticed that as a parent to a child that got dragged around the world quite frequently, is I brought her world with me. So I moved and traveled with a lot more things for my daughter than I did for myself, because she needed that. She had a personality and a way of life that needed that reassurance of there was an inner home, a little bit like a snail. She had to bring her own little home. And yes, you're right. And within the couple, the same applies. If you have one who goes, hey, I've just managed to build up a really good not-for-profit friendship circle, we're making really good inroads, then respect that. And I would say that in a growing number of couples these days, if there's a dual career couple, that increasingly it becomes more acceptable for it to be taking turns. And a little bit like your friend, where one goes, oh, that wasn't the easiest decision. I did it because for us as a couple, it made sense. But that one takes the kind of following role, the following spouse, the supportive spouse, for a couple of years that they both agree on is the time frame of that particular role. And then the next time it is the other spouse. So that neither career takes a back step. Because it is very easy for one person, if they're always the following spouse, that their career is always a backstep. It's a supportive role.
Yeah, I've seen companies who hire the executive and also find a job for the spouse. Is this
A lot of
normal?
companies, yep. Especially really large international companies, that is relatively normal. But it's still for the following spouse, even though they're employed and hopefully employed in a reasonably good fit, it is still, they were not the triggering factor. It wasn't their career that was the major benefactor. If they benefit, great, bonus, but is often not such a big benefit.
And how
They're a
does the
following
executive
spouse.
can approach the company to ask to place the spouse in the same organization?
Literally by asking it during the recruitment process.
Mm-hmm.
Whether the company has space, has got the bandwidth to employ, an extra person in whatever career they have, whatever role they have, or whether they would be willing to find a role. It might be that HR has good relationships with recruitment agents and they can assist in finding a role in the same location, but for another company. But most of the time, most common, it is within the same company, which is an interesting kind of controversy, because most big companies would have policies where the spouse is encouraged not to work for the same company.
Mm-hmm.
But in practice, that doesn't actually get implemented all that often. Yeah. Because you do, of course, get interesting situations where the following spouse ends up working in the same company, but usually at a lower level of career, because they're the following spouse, ends up working in the same company as the executive. And then you get these interesting things where it's, I'll just ask the wife whether she can have a chat with her husband about having a meeting with my husband. You get these kind of, the personal relationships then become used for career purposes, as happens in any organization, which is why working together as a couple in the same organization, you have to be aware of that.
And for the ones that are not married yet and they've been transferred and they want to do the next jump, I know that you have a lot of experience with matchmaking. Can you share a little bit some stories of clients who were single and then they noticed the importance of being in a stable relationship and how they went through that? Because it's not easy to find like your half couple here in another country. Can you share some stories?
It's kind of a lot of questions in one question. That one, it's a loaded question. There are countries where if you are not married, it becomes very difficult to get a visa, for the girlfriend or for the boyfriend. So I definitely know of couples that married. They were already a couple, but that married because of an expat placement, because it made the visa situation doable rather than not doable. So that's one particular case where people might have shortened that courtship period, the girlfriend boyfriend period, because of an expat placement. It's getting less. Those countries are less. The laws are changing in countries, but it still exists. And we're talking about heterosexual relationships. There's definitely other challenges outside of that. So that's possibly another topic altogether. But then, yes, there's this interesting thing that somewhere in the early 40s, mid 40s of the male career, females is a different story, but the male career, you're getting to the level of the career, ideally, where you want to increase that stickability. And where even the organizations in most countries that I have worked in are not allowed to say, we are going to make, we have a preference based on marital status. In practice, that stickability factor is important. So it basically means that there'll come a point that as a male, having a wife and a family becomes more attractive as you go up the ladder to the organization than being celibate. And yes, that was indeed the point at some stage in my career, because I've always done matchmaking as a hobby and eventually ran a matchmaking agency, where when I was still an exec search consultant, I went, oh, what do I do with all these amazing, early 40s, mid 40s candidates who are single because they prioritize their career?
Uh-huh.
They moved a lot, they worked a lot, they might have had relationships, but the priority was the career. And then it comes the point that I go, well, actually, for your career, if not for your holistic way of doing life, it now becomes important to prioritize, basically committing to a relationship and start building a family. And most of those male executives are not aware of this. They don't know that there's this underlying preference that is now changing from it's better to be celibate to it's better to not be celibate, or it's better to be single, or it's now better to be a family man. And that is approximately in those mid 40s, early to mid 40s for a man. Sadly, for a woman will get headhunted more if she's single, because it's still rarer, like your friend, that the heterosexual male partner is willing to give up their job, their role, to support the wife. It happens, and it's wonderful, and it should happen, but it's still rarer. And organizations basically deal with statistics, so they are less likely to headhunt women unless they're single. And again, legally, they're not allowed to ask. Legally, it doesn't make a difference. But if you look at, they'll build a profile of what they're looking for, then they will go, are they movable? Are they not movable? A woman, often even a very, very, very good career woman, often still takes a bigger responsibility, a bigger interaction for family support than the other way around. And there's plenty of evidence for that. So organizations are aware of that. So female careers, expat careers, tend to be easier when you're single. Doesn't mean that can't happen, but it's yeah. You're going against the stream. You're going against the assumptions that organizations make.
That's good, everything that you share. Yes. I noticed for me, I've changed already from Brazil to United States, from United States to Australia, that it's super important for the following spouse to really open the heart to embrace this new opportunity and be a supportive spouse. At the beginning is really hard. You have to help concentrating, adapting the kids, getting to know the culture, but slowly you're going to have time to really focus on your career again. Even being an entrepreneur is possible abroad, or finding a job, or having even more work-life balance. Finding a part-time job is totally possible. But taking decisions and having a good communication, taking a decision as a family, having good communication makes a huge difference, as you said. Thank you. That's a
It's
eye-opening thing for
yeah,
our
it's the
expats.
make or break. Yeah, it can literally make that family survive that placement and thrive, or the whole thing comes crashing down and they end up moving back.
And can you share how do you help families in this case? You work now as a coach. Can you tell us a little bit more about what do you do and how you can help the expats that are listening to us?
I would have to be honest there that at the moment I work more with the individuals than the family, but I certainly designed programs in the past for those expats that I help recruit, that I headhunted and then placed in these large multinationals, and they were very often from different countries. That was what I predominantly did. Um, what I noticed is that if the following spouses or the following families were unhappy, there was a much likelier chance that they would move back, they wouldn't stay the full amount. And if that happened in either the first 6 months or the first year of my placement as an executive search consultant, my fee was at risk. So I was financially, if not humanistically, motivated to help them thrive. There was nothing available at the time. We're going quite a few decades back, though. So I designed programs that the recruiting organization would support the expat in a package for the whole family. So if I now address your question of what would you do, what could I suggest, or what could I do with families, it is very much, and you and I have talked about this briefly, is that if you're in the preparatory, in the preparing phase, like you are as an individual or your family is now looking at a possible move abroad, it is this as a family, like first as a spouse, as the spouse, as the couple, really communicate and go, what are the pluses, what's the negatives, what are our fears, what is motivating us, and to not hold back, but to put it not in a lens of because that's where all relationships can go wrong, not in a lens of, oh, you're doing it to me again, how dare you, I've only just built my business or just made a really good friend. Because if you look at things from a blaming, a negative kind of point of view, that is very likely then going to stop a true flow of honest communication. So it's to basically be as calm as you can be when you have these discussions. And you and I both know that practicing mindfulness helps with that. But there's different things. It could be that you discuss these things in a location that you're really comfortable with. If you're both happy with nature and going for a walk, then make sure that the environment has a positive calming influence on you, because these really life-changing decisions, these really life-changing discussions only really work very well when you're calm, not when you're too excited about the opportunity or too defensive about the opportunity. Because arousement, excitement, and defensiveness close true communication. So
Do
it's that
you,
combination of a coach, if you're using coaches or if you're doing training or you're listening to podcasts on how to prepare for an expat move, is to make sure that you put yourself in a state with assistance of someone or not, some can do it themselves, to really have these meaningful conversations and then expand that to the whole family unit. So that would be in preparation. Then you go through the change, then you do the move where you need a lot of communication and a lot of resilience. And then you get to, I'm now in the new location. The person who has the job is going to be super busy, and the other person is going to be super busy trying to get used to everything, to help the whole family get used to everything. So again, you need to have ways, even if it's we're going to have a ritual of daily communication. How was your day? How was your day? What was the good things? What were the bad things? What were the challenging things? Or a weekly get together. Because very often new life changes can become so overpowering that you forget to do these really important rituals of touching base with each other in a good space, not in a rush, not defensive because somebody said, oh, you are so happy with your job and I hate this bloody place, excuse my language, that doesn't then provoke a really good exchange of information. It's
And
the
I know you're not working anymore as a direct coach for expatriates, but with the work that you're doing now, how can you help people who are listening to us? If they want to call you or contact you, what kind of support do you give for your clients at the moment?
I suppose I do less, and that's where I'm coming in. I do less of the actual working with the organization because I'm not a headhunter anymore. But I do a lot more of working with individuals, and those individuals can be in a couple or in a family scene. So I'm open to any kind of structure of, is there something that is causing you fear? Is there something that's causing you concern? Is there some kind of obstacle that you don't know how to overcome? Or are you not able to recover from something that you really would have liked to and feel that you should have recovered from? So you can apply that kind of recovery thing to, I have moved to Australia, or I have moved as an expat spouse, and I'm just not able to connect with this place. I can't let go. I miss my past. I've lost my value. I've lost my confidence. So I help people either build resiliency and grit, give them the tools to build that to overcome future challenges, or I help them soften the impact of change so that they can much better recover from a setback. And that setback could be, my relationship broke up because I'm an expat and I don't know how to recover properly because I don't have my normal network. Or it could be, I had to give up my job because it didn't work for my family. So I've worked with many people who basically said, I'm looking at divorce if I don't change what I do for a living. And I have coached those individuals and their families to move to locations that were more supportive for them as a family. Yeah, so it's this kind of, where are you at? Do I help you prepare so that you can overcome the hurdle? Or do I help you recover from a hurdle that you have trouble overcoming? I do that kind of work. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yes. What an incredible conversation today on Wisdom Woman. I hope you, our amazing listeners, found the insights shared on this episode and enlightening and inspiration as I did. The discussion on the delicate balance between marriage and career for executive expats was truly eye-opening. For me, I'm an expat, so I really know the intrinsics of it. And having Katja here sharing her personal insights was really, really interesting. To find Katja, you can look into her LinkedIn. Can you share your LinkedIn profile to everyone? How people can find you on LinkedIn?
Basically my name. So my name is Katja, Katja, Dutch spelling, like the Dutch licorice brand, exactly the same. And then again, Dutch Rembrandt, like the Dutch painter with DT at the end. Just my name, Katja Rembrandt on LinkedIn will find me. But you can also just Google me. I am relatively new to Linktree, but there is a mobile number there and there is an email address as well. That will find you. And my email address is actually my name again, but reverse. It starts with Rembrandt, then .katja@gmail.com. I'm based in Melbourne. So for those that are local or for those that are within a reasonable time zone, you're welcome.
Yeah, and before we conclude today's episode, I want to expand my heartfelt invitation to you. If you want to move and want to talk a little bit about your expat journey with me, I'm encouraging you to schedule a one-on-one call with me. You can find on witchy.tech my link to schedule one-on-one free consult. Until next time, keep embracing your unique journey and let's continue growing together. This is Betina Pflug, your coach and partner, signing off. Stay inspired, stay empowered, and always, always believe in your own success. Thank you. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Katja.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Wisdom Woman Podcast. To hear past and future episodes, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast channel. We appreciate your reviews. To give us suggestions for future show topics, please write to us at podcast@witchy.tech. If you're interested in having me as your trusted advisor, schedule a strategic coaching session on my website, www.witchy.tech.